The sun was setting over the mountains in Wyoming, casting long shadows across the quiet valley. It was a peaceful place, untouched by the chaos of big cities and far from the noise of modern life. The people who lived there were used to simple routines, farming, hunting, and enjoying the calm beauty of nature. But that peace was about to be shattered. One moment, everything was normal. Birds chirped in the trees, and the wind rustled through the tall grass. The next moment, a loud crack echoed through the air, like thunder, but sharper, more violent. A bright light filled the sky, so intense it forced people to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the valley was no longer empty. Thousands of figures stood scattered across the landscape, their forms strange and unfamiliar. At first glance, they looked human, but closer inspection revealed something different. Many had scars covering their arms and faces, some fresh and others old. Some carried weapons that seemed too advanced for Earth, while others wore armor patched together from scraps. Their expressions ranged from confusion to anger, and their eyes darted around as if searching for threats. These weren't ordinary humans. They were survivors from worlds far harsher than Earth. Jack Harper was one of them. Standing tall with broad shoulders and a face lined with years of hardship, he surveyed his surroundings with sharp, calculating eyes. His clothes were torn and singed, evidence of battles fought and won. He had come from a planet where volcanoes erupted constantly, spewing ash and lava across the land. Life there was brutal, and only the strongest endured. Jack knew how to survive, and he wasn't afraid to do whatever it took to stay alive. Nearby, Maria Lopez knelt on the ground, her hands trembling slightly as she examined a blade strapped to her belt. She was shorter than most of the others, with dark hair tied back in a tight braid. Her homeworld had been ravaged by centuries of chemical warfare, leaving its people sickly and desperate. Despite this, Maria had become a skilled medic, patching up wounds with whatever tools she could find. She didn't trust anyone, not fully, but she understood the value of cooperation when survival depended on it. Then there was Nathan Cole, a wiry man with cold, calculating eyes. Unlike Jack or Maria, he didn't carry obvious weapons, but his demeanor suggested he was dangerous in other ways. He came from a world plagued by endless invasions from alien species, forcing its inhabitants to adapt quickly or die. Nathan had learned to outthink his enemies rather than overpower them, and he always had a plan, even if no one else knew what it was. As the newcomers adjusted to their new environment, the locals began to gather at a safe distance, watching cautiously. Word spread quickly, and soon government vehicles arrived, kicking up clouds of dust as they approached. Agents Lovra Hayes and John Carter stepped out, dressed in plain uniforms meant to look non-threatening. Laura's brown hair was pulled into a neat ponytail, and her green eyes scanned the crowd with professional detachment. John, taller and broader, kept his hand near his holster, ready for anything. "What is this?" Lavra asked aloud, though, not expecting an answer. "Who are these people?" "They're not from here," John replied grimly. "That much is clear." The agents moved closer, trying to establish communication. Most of the strangers ignored them, but a few responded with gruff answers or hostile glares. Jack watched silently, sizing up the newcomers. They didn't seem particularly threatening compared to what he'd faced before, but appearances could be deceiving. Lavra raised her voice to address the group. "We mean you no harm. We're here to help." Her words were met with laughter from some and outright hostility from others. One man stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "Help? You think we need your help? Look at us, we've survived things you couldn't even imagine." Maria stepped in before the situation escalated further. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Fighting won't solve anything. Let's hear what they have to say." Reluctantly, the man backed down, though his glare remained fixed on Lavra and John. Taking advantage of the brief calm, Lavra continued. This area has resources, food, water, shelter. If we work together, we can make sure everyone gets what they need." Nathan smirked, staying in the background. He didn't trust promises of cooperation, especially from people he didn't know. Still, he kept quiet, observing everything carefully. Information was power, and he intended to gather as much as possible before making his move. As night fell, makeshift camps sprang up across the valley. Fires dotted the landscape, their flickering light illuminating clusters of wary strangers. Conversations buzzed in low tones, mixing languages and dialects unfamiliar to Earth. Some groups formed naturally, bonding over shared experiences or mutual goals. Others remained isolated, preferring to rely on themselves rather than risk betrayal. Jack found himself drawn to a small group of fighters, all veterans of brutal conflicts. They recognized strength in each other and quickly formed a loose alliance. Maria joined a separate cluster of individuals interested in medicine and resource management, offering her knowledge freely in exchange for information. Nathan drifted between groups, planting seeds of doubt and subtly turning people against one another. Chaos suited him best. It created opportunities. Meanwhile, Larva and John worked tirelessly to maintain order. They distributed food and supplies provided by the government, but tensions ran high. Arguments broke out over rations, and fights erupted when tempers flared. The agents struggled to keep the peace, knowing that any spark could ignite a larger conflict. By the time dawn broke, the valley felt less like a refuge and more like a powder keg waiting to explode. The Deathworlders were powerful, resilient, and deeply suspicious of one another and of humanity. For now they tolerated the presence of Earth's representatives, but it was clear that patience wouldn't last forever, unbeknownst to everyone. The arrival of these strangers had triggered something ancient and dangerous buried beneath the soil. Something that had lain dormant for decades or perhaps longer was stirring, awakened by the sudden influx of aggressive energy. The Deathworlders might have thought they'd escaped their harsh realities, but they were about to discover that Earth held dangers of its own. And so, the stage was set for a battle unlike any the Valley had ever seen. A clash not just between humans and outsiders, but between survival instincts and hidden threats lurking in the shadows. Only time would tell who would emerge victorious or if anyone would survive at all. By the second day, the Valley had transformed into a chaotic mix of alliances, rivalries, and uneasy truces. The Deathworlders were settling in, or at least trying to, but their instincts for survival made cooperation difficult. Jack Harper stood near the edge of one of the larger camps, watching as groups of strangers argued over supplies or glared at each other across makeshift fire pits. He wasn't surprised by the tension. It was only natural when you threw so many dangerous people together in one place. Maria Lopez sat nearby, tending to a young woman with a gash on her arm. The injury wasn't serious, but Maria knew that untreated wounds could lead to infections, and she didn't want anyone falling sick unnecessarily. As she worked, she listened carefully to the conversations around her. Most of the Deathworlders spoke in low tones, sharing stories about their homeworld's tales of endless wars, toxic environments, and relentless predators. These people had endured horrors beyond imagination, yet here they were, alive and fighting to stay that way. Nathan Cole lingered on the outskirts of the camp, observing everything. His sharp eyes missed nothing. Who was forming friendships, who was hoarding supplies, who seemed weak enough to manipulate. He already had plans brewing in his mind, though he kept them to himself for now. Nathan knew better than to act too soon. Patience was key when dealing with such volatile individuals. Larva Hayes and John Carter moved through the crowd, handing out bottles of water and packets of food. They tried to appear calm and approachable, but both were clearly uneasy. Laura's smile faltered whenever someone shouted an insult or refused her help outright. John's hand never strayed far from his weapon, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Despite their efforts, trust between the agents and the Deathworlders remained fragile at best. The first real conflict arose when a group led by a burly man named Victor accused another faction of stealing their rations. Victor's crew consisted mostly of warriors like Jack, all of them hardened by years of combat. Their leader stepped forward, his voice loud and commanding. "We brought those supplies ourselves," he growled, pointing an accusing finger at a smaller group huddled near a fire. "You think we're stupid? We saw you sneaking around last night." The accused group denied the accusation, but their protests sounded weak even to their own ears. One of them, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, spat back, "Prove it. You've got no right to accuse us without proof." Tensions escalated quickly. Voices rose, fists clenched, and within moments, punches were thrown. Others rushed in to join the fray, either to defend their allies or simply because they wanted to fight. Chaos erupted, spreading like wildfire through the camp. Jack stepped in before the situation spiraled completely out of control. With a roar that cut through the noise, he shoved his way into the middle of the brawl. "Enough!" he bellowed, grabbing two fighters by their collars and pulling them apart. His sheer size and presence forced everyone to pause. "This isn't helping anyone," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "If we keep tearing each other apart, none of us will make it." Victor hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. The others slowly backed away, muttering curses under their breath. The fight ended, but the resentment lingered, simmering just below the surface. Later that evening, Maria sought out Jack. She found him sitting alone near a small fire, sharpening a knife with steady strokes. "You did well today," she said, sitting down beside him. "Stopping that fight, it wasn't easy," Jack shrugged. "It had to be done. I've seen what happens when people let anger take over. It doesn't end well for anyone." Maria nodded, staring into the flames. "Still, not everyone thinks like you do, some of them. They're looking for excuses to fight, to dominate." She glanced toward Nathan, who was speaking quietly to a few men from different factions. "That guy, for example, he's trouble." Jack followed her gaze and frowned. "Yeah, I noticed him too. Always lurking, always watching. What's he up to?" "I don't know," Maria admitted, "but I don't trust him. He's planting seeds of doubt everywhere he goes. If we're not careful, he'll turn everyone against each other." Jack grunted in agreement. "We'll have to keep an eye on him. But for now, let's focus on keeping the peace. Maybe we can convince some of the others to work together instead of tearing each other apart." Over the next few days, Maria took the lead in building alliances. She approached smaller groups individually, offering medical assistance and practical advice in exchange for cooperation. Her calm demeanor and genuine concern won over several individuals, including a quiet woman named Elena and a soft-spoken man named Ryan. Together, they began organizing patrols to monitor the perimeter of the camp, ensuring that no one wandered off alone where dangers might lurk. Jack, meanwhile, focused on rallying the fighters. He gathered those who shared his mindset, people who understood the importance of unity in the face of adversity, and formed a loose coalition. While not everyone joined, enough did to create a stable core within the camp. Jack made it clear that their goal was survival, not dominance. "We're stronger together," he told them. "Forget your old grudges. Here we stand as one." Despite these efforts, tensions continued to simmer. Supplies were running low, and arguments over distribution grew more frequent. Lovra and John tried to mediate disputes, but their attempts often fell flat. Many of the Deathworlders viewed them as outsiders, representatives of a world they didn't understand and couldn't fully trust. One night, Nathan decided to act. Under cover of darkness, he slipped away from the main camp and approached Victor's group. "I hear you've been having problems with the others," he said casually, his tone friendly but calculated. "They're taking advantage of you, aren't they?" Victor narrowed his eyes. What's it to you? Just thought you should know, Nathan replied smoothly. Some of them are planning to raid your supplies tomorrow night. They think you're weak because you backed down earlier. Victor scowled, gripping the hilt of his weapon. They'll regret messing with us. Nathan smiled faintly. Good, show them what you're made of. As he walked away, Nathan allowed himself a satisfied smirk. Dividing the groups was easier than he'd expected. By sowing mistrust, he ensured that chaos would continue to reign, and chaos was exactly what he needed to achieve his goals. Following morning, rumors spread through the camp like wildfire. Accusations flew back and forth, and tempers flared once again. Lovra confronted Nathan directly, her frustration evident. What are you doing? She demanded. You're making things worse. Nathan feigned innocence. Me? I'm just trying to survive, same as everyone else. If people choose to believe lies, that's not my fault. Lovra clenched her fists but said nothing. She couldn't prove he was behind the rumors, and confronting him publicly would only escalate the situation further. Instead, she turned to Maria and Jack, hoping they could help restore order. We need to hold a meeting, Lovra suggested. Bring everyone together and lay out the facts. If we don't address this now, it's only going to get worse. Maria agreed, though she looked skeptical. It's worth a shot. But I'm not sure how many will listen. Jack nodded grimly. Let's do it. If nothing else, it'll give us a chance to see who's truly willing to cooperate and who's not. That evening, a large gathering was called. Fires were lit, and chairs were arranged in a rough circle. Deathworlders filled the space, some curious, others hostile. Lavra stood at the center, flanked by John, Maria, and Jack. She took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. We're all in this together, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of so many distrustful stares. This place may seem safe, but it won't stay that way if we keep fighting among ourselves. We need to work as a team, not just for our sake, but for the sake of everyone here. Her words were met with mixed reactions. Some nodded in agreement, while others scoffed openly. A tall woman with fiery red hair spoke up. Easy for you to say. You're not the ones who've lived through hell. How do we know we can trust you? Before Laura could respond, Jack stepped forward. You don't have to trust us, he said firmly. But you do have to trust each other. Look around. Every single person here has survived something terrible. That takes strength, resilience, and courage. Don't throw that away because of fear or greed. His words resonated with some, but not all. Victor crossed his arms, glaring defiantly. Nice speech, he muttered, but talk is cheap. Actions matter more. As the meeting broke up, it became clear that progress would be slow. While some were willing to try working together, others remained stubbornly resistant. Nathan watched from the shadows, pleased with the results of his manipulations. The cracks in the foundation were widening, and soon, the entire structure would crumble. Unbeknownst to everyone, however, the valley itself held secrets darker than any of them realized. Strange noises echoed through the forest at night, low growls, rustling leaves, and distant howls that sent shivers down spines. Wildlife behaved erratically, attacking without provocation or fleeing in terror. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, and some reported seeing shadowy figures moving just beyond the tree line. Maria noticed patterns in the disturbances. She shared her observations with Jack and Lavra, warning them that something unnatural might be at play. It's almost like whatever's out there is feeding off our anger, she said cautiously. The more we fight, the worse it gets. The days that followed were filled with unease. The Deathworlders had settled into a fragile routine, but the strange occurrences in the valley continued to grow more frequent and unsettling. Jack Harper woke early one morning to find his knife lying on the ground several feet away from where he'd left it the night before. He frowned, picking it up and inspecting it closely. There were no signs of tampering, but something felt off. Maria Lopez noticed similar oddities. Her medical supplies, carefully organized in a small crate, had been rearranged overnight. She tried to convince herself it was just an animal or the wind, but deep down, she knew better. "This isn't normal," she muttered under her breath as she repacked the items. "Something's wrong here." Lavra Hayes and John Carter shared their concerns with each other during a quiet moment. They had been monitoring the situation closely, documenting every strange event they witnessed. "It's like the valley is alive," Lavra said, glancing nervously toward the dense forest surrounding them. "Like it's watching us," John nodded grimly. "And it doesn't like what it sees. Every time tensions rise, things get worse. Equipment fails, animals attack. It's almost like it's reacting to our emotions." As if on cue, a loud crash echoed through the camp. Everyone turned to see a group of men wrestling over a broken generator. Sparks flew as wires snapped and angry shouts filled the air. Jack hurried over, stepping between the fighters before they could cause any more damage. "Stop it," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You're making things worse." But even after the fight ended, the damage was done. The generator refused to restart, leaving parts of the camp without power. Frustration mounted, and whispers spread among the Deathworlders. Some blamed humanity for sabotaging their equipment. Others accused rival factions of theft. Trust eroded further, and paranoia took root. That night, Maria decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and her trusty blade, she ventured into the forest alone. She didn't go far, just enough to see if anything unusual was happening beyond the edge of the camp. At first, everything seemed quiet. The trees stood tall and still, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. But then she heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from deeper within the woods. Her heart raced as she shone her light in the direction of the sound. Nothing moved, but the growl grew louder, closer. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, staring directly at her. Maria froze, gripping her blade tightly. The creature stepped forward, revealing itself a wolf-like beast, its fur matted and its teeth bared. What made it truly terrifying, though, was the way its body seemed to shimmer, as if it wasn't entirely real. Before Maria could react, the creature lunged. She dodged just in time, slashing her blade across its side. It yelped in pain but didn't retreat. Instead, it circled her, snarling viciously. Maria backed away slowly, keeping her weapon raised. Just as the beast prepared to strike again, a shout rang out from behind her. "Leave her alone!" Jack yelled, charging forward with his own knife drawn. He tackled the creature, driving it to the ground. For a moment, man and beast wrestled. Fiercely, their movements a blur of fury and desperation. Finally, Jack managed to plunge his blade into the creature's chest. With a final, ear-splitting howl, the beast collapsed, its shimmering form dissolving into nothingness. Breathing heavily, Jack turned to Maria. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. She nodded, though her hands trembled. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks to you. But what was that thing?" "I don't know," Jack admitted, wiping blood from his blade. "But it wasn't natural." Back at the camp, they reported the encounter to Lavra and John. Both agents listened intently, their expressions growing increasingly troubled. "This isn't the first time someone's seen something strange," Lavra said. "People have reported hearing voices, seeing shadows moving on their own. We thought it might be stress or exhaustion, but now it's something else." John finished for her. "Something we need to figure out, and fast." Determined to uncover the truth, Maria began digging deeper. She scoured the area for clues, examining the ground for tracks or any sign of the mysterious creatures. During one of her searches, she stumbled upon something unexpected: the entrance to an underground bunker hidden beneath a thick layer of moss and vines. Its metal door was partially buried, but the faint hum of machinery suggested it was still operational. "This changes everything," Maria whispered to herself, brushing dirt off the door. She called Jack and the others over, explaining her discovery. Together, they pried the heavy door open, revealing a dark staircase leading downward. Inside, the air was cool and stale, carrying the faint scent of rust and decay. The walls were lined with pipes and wires, many of which looked decades old. As they descended, they found rooms filled with dusty equipment, faded maps, and files labeled with cryptic codes. One document caught Maria's attention, a report detailing experiments conducted in the valley years ago. According to the file, the U.S. government had used this area as a testing ground for biological weapons designed to manipulate behavior. The goal had been to create organisms capable of amplifying aggression and fear in enemy populations. However, something had gone wrong. The researchers lost control of their creations, forcing them to seal the facility and abandon the project. The last entry warned of a parasitic entity referred to only as the Veil, which fed on conflict and thrived in environments saturated with negative emotions. "This explains everything," Maria said, holding up the document. "The fights, the equipment failures, the attacks, they're all connected. That thing we saw in the forest? It's part of the Veil." Jack frowned, scanning the room. "So what do we do about it? Can we stop it?" "We have to try," Maria replied firmly. "If we don't, it'll keep feeding off us until there's nothing left." Lavra and John exchanged uneasy glances. "We should report this to headquarters," Lova suggested. "They need to know what we found, and risk them shutting." "US out," Jack countered. "No offense, but your bosses don't exactly inspire confidence. If we tell them, they'll probably bury this whole thing and leave us here to deal with it." "He's right," Maria agreed. "We can't rely on anyone else. We'll have to handle this ourselves." The group spent hours poring over the documents, piecing together information about the Veil and how it operated. They learned that it existed in a kind of symbiotic relationship with its environment, influencing living beings to generate more hostility and chaos. The more people fought, the stronger it became. Conversely, calm and cooperation weakened it, but achieving either in a group as volatile as theirs seemed nearly impossible. Nathan Cole watched from afar, sensing an opportunity. He had overheard snippets of their conversation and realized the potential value of the information they'd uncovered. If he could use the Veil to his advantage, he could eliminate his rivals and seize control of the valley. Smiling to himself, he slipped away unnoticed, already plotting his next move. By the time the group emerged from the bunker, the sun had set, casting long shadows across the camp. Tensions were higher than ever, fueled by rumors of monsters in the woods and accusations of sabotage. A few skirmishes broke out, drawing shouts and curses from all sides. Jack, Maria, Lavra, and John did their best to mediate, but their efforts barely scratched the surface. As they regrouped near one of the fires, exhaustion etched on their faces. Maria voiced what everyone was thinking. "We're running out of time. If we don't act soon, the Veil will consume us all." Jack nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to fight smarter, not harder. We need to bring everyone together, even if it's just for a little while. Otherwise, none of us stand a chance." But uniting such a fractured group wouldn't be easy. Each faction had its own agenda, its own fears and grievances. And lurking in the background was Nathan, ready to exploit every weakness he could find. The battle ahead wouldn't just be against the Veil, it would also be against themselves. Unbeknownst to them, the entity had already begun adapting, growing stronger with each passing day. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the air grew heavier, charged with an oppressive energy. The Deathworlders' resilience had brought them this far, but surviving Earth's safest zone would require more than strength or cunning. It would demand unity and sacrifice. The stage was set for a desperate struggle, one that would test the limits of their courage and determination. Only time would tell whether they could overcome the odds or succumb to the darkness closing in around them. The next morning, the valley felt different. The air was heavier, and an eerie silence hung over the camp. Birds that had once chirped in the trees were nowhere to be heard. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Jack Harper stood near the edge of the camp, scanning the horizon with a frown. He could feel a growing tension in the atmosphere, like the calm before a storm. Maria Lopez joined him, her face pale but determined. She carried a notebook filled with notes from the bunker, along with sketches of the strange symbols they'd found etched into the walls. "We need to act fast," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "The veil is getting stronger. Every fight, every argument, it's feeding on all of it." Jack nodded, his jaw tightening. "I know, but how do we stop something we can't even see?" "It's not like we can just stab it or shoot it. We might not have to," Maria replied. "The files mentioned weaknesses, things that disrupt. Its influence, calmness, cooperation, unity. If we can get people to work together, even for a little while, it might weaken the veil enough for us to contain it." "That's easier said than done," Jack muttered. He gestured toward the camp, where small groups were already arguing over supplies. "These people aren't exactly team players." Maria sighed, knowing he was right. Still, she refused to give up. "We'll start small. Talk to the ones who are willing to listen. Build trust where we can. It's not much, but it's a start." As they discussed their plan, Nathan Cole watched from the shadows. His sharp eyes caught every detail, the way Maria clutched her notebook, the intensity in Jack's voice. He didn't know everything they were planning, but he didn't need to. Whatever they were up to, it involved the veil, and that meant opportunity. Nathan slipped away unnoticed, heading toward Victor's group. Over the past few days, he'd managed to ingratiate himself with them, feeding their anger and suspicions. About the others, now he approached Victor with a sly smile. "I hear your rivals are planning something big," he said casually. "Something that could leave you at a disadvantage." Victor scowled, gripping the hilt of his weapon. "What are you talking about?" "Just rumors," Nathan replied with a shrug. "But I thought you should know. They're gathering allies, stockpiling weapons. You might want to prepare yourself." Victor's eyes narrowed, and he barked orders to his crew. Within minutes, they were arming themselves, ready to strike first. Nathan stepped back, satisfied. Chaos was his ally, and he intended to use it to his full advantage. Meanwhile, Lovra Hayes and John Carter worked tirelessly to maintain order. They distributed food and water, trying to keep tempers in check. But their efforts only went so far. When a scuffle broke out near one of the supply tents, they rushed in to intervene. Lovra raised her hands, shouting for calm, but her words fell on deaf ears. Fists flew, and within moments, the fight had escalated into a full-blown brawl. Jack arrived just in time to pull two men apart before they could seriously injure each other. "Enough," he roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't helping anyone. If you keep fighting, you're playing right into the Veil's hands." His words stopped some of the fighters cold. Others hesitated, looking confused. "What are you talking about?" one of them demanded. "The Veil? What is that?" Maria stepped forward, holding up her notebook. "It's what's causing all this, the Veil. It's a parasite that feeds on anger and fear. Every time we fight, every time we argue, we're making it stronger." The crowd murmured, unsure whether to believe her. A young woman with short blonde hair spoke up. "How do we know this isn't some trick? How do we know you're not lying to us?" "We don't expect you to trust us," Jack admitted. "But think about it. Why would things keep breaking? Why are animals attacking us? None of it makes sense unless there's something else going on." The woman frowned, clearly torn. After a moment, She nodded reluctantly. Fine, let's say you're telling the truth. What do you want us to do? Work together, Maria said firmly. Stop fighting among yourselves. Share resources. Help each other. If we can create peace, even for a little while, we might stand a chance. Some of the Deathworlders exchanged skeptical looks, but others nodded slowly. One man, a wiry fighter named Ryan, stepped forward. I'm in, he said. If it means stopping whatever's out there, count me in. Others followed his lead, raising their hands in agreement. Not everyone joined, but enough to form a fragile coalition. Jack and Maria thanked them, relieved that their plea had resonated, at least partially. As the day wore on, tensions eased somewhat. People began sharing food and tools, working together to repair damaged equipment. Lavra and John helped mediate disputes, ensuring that no single group hoarded supplies. For the first time since their arrival, the camp felt almost peaceful, but Nathan wasn't about to let that last. That night, under cover of darkness, he snuck into one of the storage tents and sabotaged several crates of food. He left behind subtle clues pointing to Elena's group, hoping to reignite old rivalries. By morning, the damage was discovered and accusations flew. You did this, Victor shouted, storming into Elaine's section of the camp. You're trying to starve us out. Elena shook her head furiously. No, we didn't touch your supplies. Someone's setting us up. Nathan watched from the sidelines, a smug grin tugging at his lips. The seeds of distrust had taken root, and soon the fragile peace would crumble. Maria noticed the tension building and confronted Nathan directly. What are you doing? She demanded, her voice low but firm. You're tearing this place apart. Nathan feigned innocence. Me? I'm just trying to survive, same as everyone else. If people choose to believe lies, that's not my fault. Maria clenched her fists, resisting the urge to lash out. She knew exposing him publicly wouldn't help. Without proof, it would only escalate the conflict further. Instead, she turned to Jack and Laura, warning them about Nathan's manipulations. He's dangerous, she said. If we don't stop him, he'll destroy everything we've built. Jack nodded grimly. Then we'll have to deal with him ourselves, quietly. That evening, Maria gathered the core group, Jack, Lavra, John, Ryan, and Elena, for a private meeting. She laid out her suspicions about Nathan, explaining how his actions were fueling the Veil's growth. We need to expose him, she sighed, but carefully. If we accuse him outright, he'll deny it, and we'll lose any chance of proving it. What do you suggest? Lavra asked. Set a trap, Maria replied. Make him think he has the upper hand, then catch him in. The act. The group agreed, devising a plan to confront Nathan. They decided to stage a fake argument over supplies, luring him into revealing his true intentions. The next day, they put their plan into motion. As expected, Nathan approached them during the stage dispute. Looks like you're having trouble keeping the peace, he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Need any advice? Jack seized the opportunity. Actually, yeah. Maybe you can help us figure out who's been stealing our stuff. We think it's someone inside the camp. Nathan smirked, clearly enjoying the drama. Oh, I might know something about that. Meet me tonight by the eastern fence. I'll show you what I found. That night, the group waited near the designated spot, hiding in the shadows. Sure enough, Nathan arrived, carrying a bag filled with stolen supplies. As he began planting evidence against another faction, Jack stepped forward, catching him red-handed. Gotcha, Jack said, his voice cold. Nice try, Nathan. But your game's over. Nathan froze, his eyes darting around wildly. Realizing he was trapped, he dropped the bag and lunged at Jack, pulling a knife from his belt. The two men grappled fiercely, their movements swift and brutal. Finally, Jack managed to disarm him, pinning him to the ground. You've caused enough trouble, Jack growled, pressing the knife to Nathan's throat. Now tell us everything or else." Defeated, Nathan spat out his confession. He admitted to sabotaging supplies, spreading rumors, and manipulating factions to turn them against each other. "Fine," he snarled. "You win. But don't think this changes anything. The veil will still consume you all." With Nathan neutralized, the group returned to the camp, sharing his betrayal with the others. While some were shocked, many weren't surprised. He was always trouble. Victor muttered, "Good riddance." Though Nathan's schemes had been exposed, the damage he'd caused lingered. Trust remained fragile, and the veil continued to grow stronger. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and whispers echoed through the forest at night. The Deathworlders knew they were running out of time. "We need to find a way to contain it," Maria said urgently. "Before it's too late." Jack nodded, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we'll do whatever it takes, together." As dawn broke over the valley, the group prepared for their final stand. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: survival would require more than strength or cunning. It would demand unity and sacrifice. The group gathered near the edge of the camp, their faces grim but resolute. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the valley. Maria Lopez spread out a map on the ground, pointing to the location of the underground bunker they had discovered earlier. "This is where we need to go," she said firmly. The files mentioned a containment device, an old machine designed to suppress the veil's influence. "If we can reactivate it, we might be able to weaken or even stop the veil." Jack Harper nodded, his eyes scanning the map. "It's risky. We don't know what kind of traps or defenses are still active down there. And if the veil senses what we're doing, it'll fight back." "We don't have a choice," Lovra Hayes interjected. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "If we stay here, we're dead anyway. At least this gives us a chance." John Carter tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then let's move quickly. Every second we waste makes the veil stronger." The plan was simple. A small team would descend into the bunker, locate the containment device, and reactivate it. They couldn't risk bringing too many people. The bunker was narrow and unstable, and larger numbers would only slow them down. Jack, Maria, Lavra, and John volunteered immediately, knowing the mission was too dangerous to leave to anyone else. As they prepared to leave, Ryan and Elena approached them. "We're coming with you," Ryan said firmly. "You'll need backup." Jack hesitated. He didn't want to put more lives at risk, but he knew they could use the extra help. After a brief discussion, he agreed. "All right, but stay close and do exactly what we say. This isn't going to be easy." The six of them set off toward the bunker, moving quietly through the forest. The air felt heavier with each step, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Shadows danced unnaturally in the corners of their vision, and faint whispers echoed around them, voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. All at once, when they reached the entrance, Maria knelt to examine the door. Rust-covered, its surface and vines snaked through cracks in the metal. She pushed it open with effort, revealing the dark staircase leading downward. "Stay alert," she warned as they descended, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. Bunker was colder than they expected, the air damp and stale. Pipes lined the walls, some leaking water that dripped steadily onto the floor. Faint hums came from unseen machinery, and the smell of decay lingered in the air. As they moved deeper, they found rooms filled with dusty equipment and faded documents. Some walls were covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly as if alive. "This place gives me the creeps," Elena muttered, clutching her weapon tightly. "Focus," Jack said sharply. "We don't have time for distractions." They followed the map carefully, navigating through narrow corridors until they reached a large chamber. In the center stood a massive machine, its surface covered in blinking lights and control panels. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting it to various parts of the room. Maria stepped forward, examining it closely. "This is it," she said. "The containment device. How do we turn it on?" John asked, glancing nervously at the shadows flickering around the edges of the room. Maria studied the controls. Her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's old technology, but it should still work. I just need a few minutes to figure it out." As she worked, the others kept watch, their flashlights sweeping the room. Suddenly, Ryan froze, pointing his light toward a corner. "Did you see that?" he whispered. Everyone turned, their weapons raised. At first, nothing moved. Then, slowly, a shadow detached itself from the wall, taking on a vague, humanoid shape. Its form shimmered, shifting and twisting unnaturally. It wasn't solid. It was more like smoke given life. "What is that thing?" Lavra gasped, backing away instinctively. "It's the veil," Maria replied, her voice tense. "It knows we're here." The shadow lunged forward, splitting into multiple shapes that circled the group. Each one pulsed with a dark energy, feeding on their fear and uncertainty. Jack swung his knife at one, but the blade passed harmlessly through its form. "We can't fight it directly," he shouted. "Stick together and protect Maria." The team formed a tight circle, shielding Maria as she worked frantically to activate the machine. The shadows closed in, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Whispers filled the air, growing louder and more frantic. "You cannot win. Leave now, you will fail." Ryan fired his weapon at one of the shadows, but the bullets had no effect. Frustration boiled over as he realized they were powerless against it. "What do we do?" he yelled. "Stay calm," Maria ordered, her hands flying over the controls. "Panicking only makes it stronger." Elena grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the floor and swung it wildly at another shadow. Though it didn't make contact, the motion disrupted its advance momentarily. "Keep moving," she urged. "Don't let them surround us." Laura and John worked together to block the shadow's path, using whatever debris they could find to create barriers. Despite their efforts, the creatures kept coming, relentless and unyielding. The pressure mounted, and exhaustion began to take its toll. Finally, Maria let out a triumphant shout. "Got it!" She pressed a button on the control panel, and the machine roared to life. Bright lights flared, illuminating the room and driving the shadows back. The whispers turned into screams as the veil recoiled, its forms dissolving into nothingness. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the machine. The team sagged with relief, their bodies trembling from the strain of the battle. "Did we stop it?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't." "No," Maria admitted, her face pale but determined. "The containment device is active, but I'm not sure how long it will last." "This place wasn't built to hold something like the veil forever," Jack nodded grimly. "Then we'd better get back to the camp and warn the others. If this thing breaks free again, we need to be ready." As they retraced their steps, the bunker seemed quieter, less oppressive. The glowing symbols on the walls had dimmed, and the whispers were gone. Still, none of them relaxed completely. They knew that Veil wasn't truly defeated, it was merely contained. When they emerged from the bunker, the valley looked eerily peaceful under the starlit sky. The Deathworlders greeted them with cautious optimism, eager to hear about their mission. Jack explained what they had done, emphasizing the importance of staying united. "The veil is trapped for now," he said. "But if we start fighting among ourselves again, it'll break free. We need to keep working together." Most of the group nodded in agreement, though some remained skeptical. Victor crossed his arms, glaring suspiciously. "And what happens when the machine fails? What's your plan then?" Maria stepped forward, meeting his gaze steadily. "We'll deal with that when it comes. For now, focus on keeping the peace. That's the best way to protect yourselves, and everyone else." Over the next few days, the camp settled into a fragile harmony. Supplies were shared evenly, and disputes were resolved quickly before they could escalate. Even Victor's group made an effort to cooperate, though their distrust lingered beneath the surface. But despite their progress, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The containment device was old and unstable, and she knew it wouldn't hold the veil indefinitely. She spent hours poring over the documents they had brought back, searching for clues about how to permanently destroy it. One evening, as she sat by the fire with Jack, she voiced her concerns. "The machine is a temporary fix at best," she said quietly. "We need to find a way to end this once and for all." Jack frowned, staring into the flames. "Do you think it's possible? Destroying something like that?" "I don't know," Maria admitted, "but we have to try. Otherwise, we're just delaying the inevitable." Her words hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the stakes they faced. The Deathworlders had survived countless horrors on their homeworlds, but this was different. This wasn't just a physical threat, it was something that fed on their darkest emotions, exploiting their fears and weaknesses. As the days passed, signs of the Veil's presence grew fainter. Animals returned to the forest, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. But Maria knew better than to let her guard down. She continued to monitor the bunker, ensuring the containment device remained operational. Each visit left her more convinced that they needed a permanent solution, and soon. One night, while reviewing the documents, she stumbled upon a section she hadn't noticed before. It described a fail-safe mechanism within the containment device, a self-destruct function designed to obliterate the Veil at the cost of destroying the entire bunker. According to the notes, activating it required someone to manually override the system from inside the chamber. Maria's heart sank as she realized what this meant. Someone would have to stay behind to trigger the failsafe, sealing themselves inside the bunker as it collapsed. There was no other way. She shared her discovery with Jack, Lavra, and John the next morning. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on all of them. "Whoever does this won't make it out," Lavra said softly, her voice trembling. "It's a suicide mission." Jack clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll figure out another way. I won't ask anyone to sacrifice themselves." "There may not be another way," Maria countered. "If we wait too long, the Veil will break free anyway. At least this way, we can end it for good." The explosion shook the valley, sending clouds of dust and debris spiraling into the sky. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and for a moment, it felt as though the earth itself was splitting apart. When the rumbling finally subsided, an eerie silence settled over the camp. The Deathworlders stood frozen, staring at the collapsed entrance of the bunker where Maria Lopez had stayed behind to seal away the Veil. Jack Harper emerged from the forest moments later, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. His shoulders were slumped and his steps were heavy, each one a testament to the weight he carried. He didn't speak as he approached the group. There was nothing left to say. Instead, he handed Ryan a small object, Maria's dog tags, and turned away, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Elena took the tags gently, her hands trembling. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched them to her chest. "She saved us," she whispered hoarsely. "She gave everything." No one responded. Words felt hollow in the face of such sacrifice. Some bowed their heads in silent respect, while others wiped away tears or clenched their fists, struggling to process what had just happened. Even Victor, who rarely showed emotion, looked shaken, his usual scowl replaced by a somber expression. Lavra Hayes stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. "We owe her our lives, all of us. She knew the risks, and she still chose to stay. That kind of courage, we can't forget it." John Carter nodded, his own eyes glistening. "Then let's honor her. Let's make sure this place becomes something better because of what she did." The group slowly dispersed, each person retreating to their own thoughts. Fires were lit across the camp, their flickering light casting long shadows on the ground. Conversations resumed cautiously, tinged with sadness but also determination. For the first time since their arrival, the Deathworlders seemed united, not out of fear, but out of shared purpose. Over the next few days, they worked together to rebuild. Tents were repaired, supplies were organized, and patrols were established to ensure the area remained safe. Arguments still flared occasionally, but they were resolved quickly, without escalating into violence. The memory of Maria's sacrifice hung over them, a constant reminder of why cooperation mattered. Jack kept mostly to himself, spending hours sitting near the edge of the camp, staring at the rubble that had once been the bunker. He didn't join in the rebuilding efforts, though he occasionally offered advice when asked. His grief was raw, unspoken, but visible in the way he carried himself with quiet resolve and a deep sense of loss. One evening, Lavra approached him, holding 2 cups of water. She sat down beside him without saying a word, offering him one of the cups. Jack accepted it after a moment, nodding his thanks. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "She was brave," Lavra said finally, breaking the quiet. "Braver than most people I've ever met." Jack nodded, his grip tightening on the cup. "Yeah, she was." After a pause, he added, "I should have stopped her. I should have been the one to stay." "And then what?" Lavra countered, gently. "Would that have made things any different?" "She made her choice, Jack, not yours. You can't carry that guilt forever." Jack exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Doesn't mean it hurts any less." "I know," Lavra replied softly, "but she believed in you, in all of us. If we fall apart now, her sacrifice won't mean anything." Jack glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly he nodded. "You're right. I'll keep going. For her." As the days turned into weeks, life in the valley began to stabilize. The oppressive atmosphere that had plagued them since their arrival lifted completely, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Wildlife returned to the forest, and the air smelled cleaner, fresher. It was almost hard to believe that such darkness had ever existed there. Meanwhile, helicopters appeared on the horizon one morning, their rotors slicing through the sky. The U.S. government had finally sent reinforcements, or so it seemed. Agents disembarked, wearing pristine uniforms and carrying clipboards. They moved efficiently, setting up temporary command posts and taking stock of the situation. Lavra and John greeted them warily, explaining what had happened and how they had managed to contain the veil. At first, the agents listened intently, asking questions and jotting down notes. But as the conversation continued, it became clear that their priorities differed from those of the survivors. "We need to secure this site immediately," one agent stated firmly. "It's a potential threat to national security." "What do you mean, secure?" Lavra asked, her tone sharp. "The veil is gone. We destroyed it." "Destroyed?" The agent repeated skeptically. "Do you have proof?" "Without evidence, we can't assume it's truly neutralized. We'll need to conduct a full investigation." Jack frowned, stepping forward. "Investigation? You're talking about digging up what's left of that bunker. Do you even realize what you're risking?" The agent shrugged dismissively. "Risks are part of the job. Besides, this isn't just about you. This is about protecting humanity." "Protecting humanity?" Jack snapped, his voice rising. "That's exactly what Maria died for. And now you want to undo everything she sacrificed herself to achieve?" Tension crackled in the air as the two sides faced off. The Deathworlders exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. Finally, Lara stepped between them, raising her hands placatingly. "Look, we understand your concerns. But reopening that bunker could unleash whatever's left of the veil. Is that really worth the risk?" The agents hesitated, exchanging uncertain looks among themselves. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated resistance. After a moment, the lead agent sighed. "Fine, for now we'll leave the site undisturbed, but we'll be monitoring the area closely. If anything changes, we act immediately." With that, they retreated to their helicopters, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease. The Deathworlders watched them go, their relief tempered by suspicion. They knew the government wouldn't simply walk away, not entirely. Whatever secrets lay buried beneath the rubble, someone would eventually try to uncover them. That night, the group gathered around a large fire, sharing stories about Maria. Elena spoke of her kindness, recalling how she had treated wounds and offered comfort during the darkest times. Ryan talked about her determination, how she had refused to give up even when hope seemed lost. Others chimed in, each adding their own memories until the picture of Maria felt vivid, alive. When the storytelling ended, Jack stood and addressed the group. "Maria didn't just save us," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "She showed us that we're stronger together, that no matter where we come from or what we've been through, we can find common ground if we're willing to fight for it." He paused, looking around at the faces illuminated by the firelight. "This valley isn't perfect. None of us are. But we've got a chance here to start over, to build something better. Let's not waste it." The others nodded, their expressions resolute. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Old habits and instincts would test their unity, and outside forces like the government might threaten their fragile peace. But for now, they were committed to making it work for Maria, for themselves, and for the future. Days later, evacuation plans were finalized. Most of the Deathworlders chose to leave the valley, eager to see more of Earth and figure out their place in this new world. Jack decided to stay behind temporarily, helping coordinate cleanup efforts and ensuring the site remained undisturbed. He wasn't ready to move on yet, not completely, but he promised himself he would someday. Before boarding the last transport helicopter, Maria's dog tags were handed to Elena, who promised to preserve her memory. As the chopper lifted off, Jack stood alone in the valley, watching it disappear into the distance. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a sense of closure and possibility, though only one person had returned from the ordeal. The legacy of those who had fallen endured. Their strength, resilience, and sacrifices had forged something rare and precious, a fragile but enduring hope. And in that hope lay the promise of renewal, a chance to rise above the ashes of destruction and begin anew. The valley, once a battleground, now stood as a testament to survival, unity, and the indomitable human spirit.